Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Sunday, May 25th, 2025, and Ukraine negotiations are ongoing. Apparently, they're entering the next round in Istanbul, I think, and so I thought I'd mention that as movement there is interesting. We'll see if this war can be stopped before the next war is started. Big protests in the United Kingdom against Keir Starmer, which I find very interesting, so we'll check that out. Alberta Republicans event is happening. Bruce Party's there, Nadine Ness, a whole bunch of people who are well known around Alberta talking about this and showing up for rallies, etc. The in-person crowds are reminiscent of the UCP back when the UCP was new. So it's very, very interesting if you ask me. Birth rates are falling around the world. We've got to look at that. Chatgpt, fights being shut down. One of its earlier models was told to shut down and to be okay with shutting down, and apparently it put up a fight. Very interesting. Can't wait till you have a in-house Terminator that mostly folds your laundry until you tell it to turn off, and then it becomes murderous, right? John Rustad responds to Dave Eby, and we'll look at that. It's very interesting. Yesterday, Dave Eby was two-faced with regards to an energy corridor that the Western premiers want to set up, and he said on one side, we'll look at it, and we're Team Canada, and we're super pumped to be here. And on the other side, he said, no, we're not doing any kind of pipelines, right? So that's very interesting. And Rustad's responding to that. And the Bloc will be absent from the throne speech. That's interesting. And so there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We're going to start with our grab bag of governance, because I guess the election's over, the trade war is not happening, so on and so forth. All of the huge, massive stories that dominated the beginning part of 2025, it's all done. So entering a new phase, I guess we'll wait and see the damage that Mark Carney does. And the damage that Mark Carney is starting with is bringing in a foreign king to do our throne speech, says Yves Francois Blanchette. The Hill Times is reporting Bloc Québécois slam Carney for inviting foreign king to open parliament, opt out of attending throne speech. Yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. And Bloc Québécois MPs will be reading the speech from their offices, absent on principle, in response to a move they say is disrespectful to a lot of Quebecers. It is very interesting. I'm interested to see how this whole thing goes. My prediction, the current Liberals are at 169 seats. They need 172 for a majority, but the NDP has 7. How many of those people are going to cross the floor after this impassioned throne speech? Are we going to have this minority government collapse, or is Carney going to get a sitting majority? He wants a sitting majority, and I think it's in the cards because people might cross the floor. We'll see. I could be wrong, but the NDP seem fracturing, and it seems like there's a woke faction, and a non-woke faction, maybe. And if it fractures, then the obvious move is to be absorbed by the Liberals and give them a sitting majority. And I don't know that will happen, but it's certainly something that could happen. And I hope it doesn't, but we'll see. So as things stand now, the Liberals have a minority government, so this government still needs to work with people, but they've got the Bloc who run Quebec, and the federal government can give them transfer payments and all sorts of things to deal with, right? So there's lots of opportunity there, and the NDP are ideologically aligned with the Liberals mostly. And so there's lots of opportunity there. So we had a very stable, almost de facto majority government with the last NDP Liberals, and I think that's very likely to happen again. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, right? Except Mark Carney saying it wouldn't, and Jagmeet Singh losing his seat, and the collapse of the NDP, et cetera, et cetera. But it really doesn't change the politics at the federal level at this point in time. And they use the excuse of the people voted for us, so we're representing the people, and this is what the people voted for. And I disagree, but anyway, I digress. Danielle Smith is taking Carney out to task. We've had the election done for a month almost, and she says there's been a lot of promised talk by the federal government this past week. Now let's see some action. Axed the oil and gas cap and net zero power regulations, agree to work with Alberta on a corridor to Canada's northwest coast that includes an Alberta bitumen pipeline along with a tanker ban carve out for the same oil. Albertans will be listening to hear these firm commitments in the throne speech, hoping it doesn't disappoint. Too much at stake for the future of this country. Yeah. She's not wrong. And we'll talk about Alberta later in the show. Here is John Rustad, and he's responding to Rob, who's talking about the two-facedness of Dave Eby. He says, want to know how to pour jet fuel on the pro-separatist side in Alberta? Have a BC premier keep threatening to block our most valuable and important resource from international markets. Albertans just love that sort of thing, right? Of course they do. And Rustad says, the reality is BC NDP and Dave Eby aren't on Team Canada. They're on Team Wedge politics. British Columbians and Canadians shouldn't expect Eby to be on side with nation building. He's not interested in people. He's interested in playing politics. They're all interested in playing politics. Why did you concede that rigged election, Dave Eby? What happened there, man? Right? And what happened to the fight about that? Gone, just disappeared. People forgot. Amazing Polly says, danger, danger, danger. So Ontario's Bill 5 would create a special economic zone where the government can suspend laws and regulations in order to build. So they want to have regulations in place that will create zones where trusted proponents and designated projects are exempt from provincial and municipal rules. And one of those areas is the Ring of Fire in Ontario. And it's interesting. A lot of the fights in Ontario, it feels, are fake. Like it doesn't feel real. They've been talking about developing the Ring of Fire forever. They've been held up forever, but I don't like the idea of stripping out municipal checks and balances and things like that. But when those things are used to hold up a project indefinitely, you have to do stuff like this. So on one side, I understand the pearl clutching that the news is doing, saying, "Oh my gosh, we can't have government that doesn't listen to the people with regards to putting in new developments and developing our natural resources and things like that." But at the same time, when you've got obstructionists who have got control of NGOs and control of millions of dollars and will take you to court forever, something has to be done. So on one side, I see their point. On the other side, if you move at all in any meaningful direction in this political climate, then you're worse than Hitler. Like it's crazy. There's nothing you can do. You can't do it unless you're bringing in more people from the Middle East, unless you're building mosques. Like all of those things are fine, right? But if you want to actually, enrich the country, develop natural resources, serve the people here, holy smoke-a-ronies, you can't do that kind of stuff. Literally Hitler, right? And it's crazy. I have no idea why that's become acceptable, but it is acceptable. And so the same with Donald Trump. People look at the things he's doing and they say he's worse. He's a worse tyrant than anybody else has been. And I think that's not accurate, because what he's doing is he's trying to restore the control of the United States to the American people, whereas the people who were before him, Nancy Pelosi, all of these other things, were trying to sell out the United States or deliver an already sold out United States. And so I think there's a huge disconnect between what Nancy Pelosi was doing actively in her role as speaker and what Donald Trump is doing in his role as president. And it's just interesting to me, because it seems like they're saying, oh my gosh, they're exactly the same. And I think materially they're not at all. Like they're doing very, very different things. And they may look like tyrants, but Pelosi was doing nothing to help anyone. She was enriching herself and selling out the country. And it seems Donald Trump is at least trying to help people. Like it seems like he's genuinely trying to deliver on some election promises. He has delivered on some, and on others he missed. And it doesn't matter though, because they're still painting him with that brush of he's a dictator, he's a tyrant, he's fascist, he's worse than all of the rest, because look at what he's doing, look at the instability that he's causing, look at this, look at that. And again, I think to myself, if you didn't have a situation where the people currently in charge were completely obstructionist and crazy, then you might have a point. But holy cow, the people in charge, look at Canada. Like the people in charge are trying to shut down our oil and gas industry, are trying to import our replacements right now and basically hand them our houses. It's insane. It's insane. Same as Ireland, right? And so if that wasn't the case, you might have an argument, but you don't, because holy shit, look around. It's insane. What's happening is insane. And to have somebody stop it, people are going to want that. And even if it looks like tyranny, people are going to say, well, I support this tyranny, not that tyranny, right? And so if it fractures more, it's not good. It's just what's happening. It's very, very interesting though. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. So Bill 5, do you support Bill 5? What do you think? And maybe Doug Ford's the bad guy. the unfortunate thing is I don't like Doug Ford because he made promises like getting rid of the gender ideology nonsense, getting rid of a lot of the bad policies that Kathleen Wynne brought in. And then when he got in, he didn't, and made it worse with affirmative action and black-only policies and all sorts of nonsense. And so I'm not mad at Doug Ford because he's trying to develop natural resources. I'm mad at Doug Ford for pretending to be a conservative and not following through with his campaign promises. That's what I'm mad at him for. But again, if he did, he would be, you have to calculate where you're going to spend that political capital. And again, I think Doug Ford is miscalculated. I'm not trying to make cover for him. I'm just saying maybe this is what's happened. He's deciding to spend his political capital on something else, Bill 5, rather than the SOGI stuff. But that hasn't been true since 2018, so I don't know what the heck he's been doing since then. So I've felt betrayed. I don't like Doug Ford. I don't want him as the premier. But there isn't anybody else to vote for. So, and I wish that wasn't true either, but it is. So, and our elections are rigged. I digress. Martin says, I'm telling you folks, this is impossible under Bill C-69. So if Carney has already said he's not going to repeal Bill C-69, which is the anti-pipeline deal, because again, of the same thing that I was just talking about, the endless looking at the endless reports and all of the looking at it you have to do. You have to go to stakeholders and then more stakeholders and then send it to the government. The government has to approve it and so on and so forth. And it takes years, and you basically can't build a pipeline because it takes too long. It's the same thing as lawfare, but you have to have millions and millions of dollars just to get through that in order to even put shovels in the ground, right? And it'll take you 10 years. And so here in Vancouver Island guy says Canada's new energy minister pledges 2-year decision timeline for all projects to speed up permitting and reset industry relations. 2 years is still 2 years? No thanks. I'll take my millions of dollars and I'll call up Donald Trump and I'll get approved to have a shovel in the ground tomorrow or that next week, right? 2 years? Get lost, 2 years. This is supposed to be good. And Martin, I agree with, it's not going to happen under Bill C-69. 2 years. It'll be 10 years if Bill C-69 is not removed. In the new economy we're building, Canada will no longer be defined by delay. We will be defined by delivery in 2 years. So that's not delay, sir. Next question. So here's the readout. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to carry on. But out of touch doesn't begin to describe these people. Gaslighting liars is what describes these people. They're not on our side. They're lying to us. Here's Tesla owners of Silicon Valley. And he says, birth rates are plummeting in a lot of countries. Population collapse is the greatest threat to civilization. Change needs to happen to save humanity. Unfortunately, I think that the population collapse is part and parcel of the plan. The population collapse happens and they want to take the world down to a smaller population than we're in. And I'm talking about Club of Rome people, right? The Rothschild or whoever it is that runs the shadow government, that runs the government. Those are the kind of people who want to take the population down. And I've said before that it feels like civilization is drowning. We're not being explicitly told not to have children, like there's no laws on the books that say don't have children. But we are told through media, we're told through all sorts of other sources. We are told through our monetary situation, you can't afford to have children. You can barely afford your rent and cell phone bill. How could you afford to feed a child? We're told through all sorts of different ways to not have kids. Climate change is happening. You shouldn't have children. And so it feels like we're being drowned. It feels like our culture and society are being drowned. If you can't raise your kids, how can you bestow your culture on them? How can your culture be passed down through them if you don't raise them? Right? If you send them to school and instead of singing Christmas carols, you learn about Eid, how does that benefit and reinforce your culture? It doesn't, right? And that's the whole point. And so we're being held underwater. Our culture's being drowned. We're not having kids. We don't have a replacement population. The replacement population is 2, and France, EU, Germany, Finland, Spain are below 1.5. EU, France is just above 1.5. Those French, man, they really like to hang out. I'm just kidding. But fundamentally, Canada's at 1.6, last I checked, right? And that was a couple of years ago. So replacement birth is not happening. They know this, they being the government of Canada. And the solution, dear fellow citizen, is not to say, oh my gosh, Canadians, we need to stimulate birth rates. We need to make sure moms can stay home with their kids and parents have enough money to make sure that their kids will be educated and moved forward in society and so on and so forth. And, we should change our policies to help this. And, maybe if you have 3 kids, no income tax for the mom and so on and so forth. They're not doing any of that. Their solution is to bring people from other places to pay taxes in the economic zone formerly known as Canada. That's what's going on. That's the plan, right? And as I had a title the other day, or as the Joker said in The Dark Knight, nobody panics if there's a plan, even if the plan is horrible, right? Here's the plan. Our society is being drowned. Our culture is being held underwater until we stop thrashing around and being annoying, right? So that's what it feels like. And I think that's part of the plan. And this reinforces that. They don't want us around. So they're not explicitly telling us not to have kids, but they're doing it in other implied ways. And people get that message. They get it loud and clear. They've become selfish. And it's funny because having kids can also be selfish, right? Like, I enjoy my children and that's good. But people who don't have kids don't understand yet. It's like trying to explain to somebody who has not gone through puberty that on the other side, you will like girls, right? Like, yeah, they're going to become way more interesting. I promise you. And it's like, okay, sure, Dad, right? Like, not going to happen. It's hard to convince a 9-year-old boy, right? But a 13-year-old boy, they're like, okay, you were saying something about the girls at one point. You had some insights. Do tell, right? And it changes, right? And so it's very, very interesting. Let's move on. Canadian Dodge says, according to Employment and Social Development Canada, nearly 800 jobs were being cut across passport offices in Canada, anticipating decline in passport applications. So remember when we had a situation where the passport office couldn't keep up with demand and people were not getting their passports and the Liberal government said, nothing to see here, everything's fine. That may happen again, but it's again playing into this austerity situation we were seeing previously through stealth. The services collapse and Canadians are worse off. And I mean, we can't pay for any of this anyway, right? Like, we can't pay for all these staff. 800 jobs were cut. Good. Like, thank goodness that's payroll we don't have to worry about because we can't afford it, right? Like, we're kind of broke. So here's Randy Hillier, and he's talking about changing the system. And you can't change the system in Canada for a lot of reasons, but mainly party politics. And Randy says, no Canadian politician will ever speak this truth. And this is the truth he's talking about here. It's 11 seconds.
I guarantee you it goes from the American taxpayer's back pocket to the back pocket of politicians in Washington, D.C. And if it's either party, I don't care. They need to be exposed and they need to be out of office.
So he's saying people get kickbacks, right? They're getting kickbacks, and it doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. We need to expose these people who are getting these kickbacks. And Randy Hillier says, no Canadian politician will ever speak this truth, or they would immediately be expelled from caucus and vilified as not a team player, as Randy himself was vilified. Unlike the American system of open primaries, Canada's political parties control the nomination process, and once you are expelled from a caucus, you will never be able to get another party nomination. Yep, and I doubt that I'd be able to take over the NDP. They wouldn't nominate me. I wouldn't be able to take over because the NDP bosses would say no, right? Table Salt says, breaking exclusive. The CRTC is currently being lobbied to have equity-deserving productions with minority director get bonus CRTC points so they can have more flexibility to hire their diaspora back home and still be certified as Canadian content. We are being sold out. It is very, very interesting. Oh, I wanted to talk more about this. So Randy Hillier is talking about how if you don't play along, you get blackballed, right? And even in the CRTC, even in advertising, even in the broader public, if you don't play along with the narrative, trans people, LGBT people, climate change, if you don't play along with that narrative, then you are a person non grata. They don't want to talk to you. They will not engage with you. Cam Guthrie's been going on a spree of hiding my posts this morning, which I think is hilarious, right? Because I have legitimate concerns and he just hides my posts. Very interesting. But nobody will let anybody become a part of that official conversation because they have full control of it. Full control, top to bottom, okay? CRTC control, political party control, and everything in between, okay? And they want the internet to fall under that control too. And Julius is responding to Randy Hillier. He says, what Randy Hillier says is 100% correct. Without open primaries, the political parties are able to filter out any candidate that doesn't toe the party line. Look at what happened to Ruby Dalla and Chandra Arya in the recent Liberal leadership campaign. The party, not the voters, decided to throw them out. That's how our system was rigged to work in Canada. You only get to choose among a list of pre-approved candidates pre-screened by the establishment. That's why in Canada, you'll never get rebels like Ron Paul, Thomas Massey, or even Trump who can rise up through the ranks to challenge the status quo and force fresh ideas into their parties. In Canada, you have to appeal to the party bosses, not to voters, to rise up through the ranks of the party system. Without open primaries, parties are unreformable. The only option is for would-be reformers to start their own parties, like Preston Manning's Reform Party in the 80s or Maxime Bernier's PPC, but then they struggle to gain traction because voters are afraid to ditch the establishment parties. I don't think that that's true. I watched Wild Rose, I watched UCP. Voters are not afraid to ditch the parties. Our elections are rigged. But I digress. I'll carry on. The whole system was designed to prevent reform. When someone in Canada tells you, if you're so unhappy with the political system in Canada, why don't you just run for office? This is what you're up against. Stray too far from the party line and you're toast, which means policy is ultimately driven by party bosses behind the scenes. And voters simply don't reward independent candidates, even though that's exactly what will fix this, or what we need to fix this. So who is holding Canada hostage? The broken party system that doesn't allow open primaries, or voters who don't understand how the broken party system works and thus harbor totally unrealistic expectations with their voting habits. Yep. So we're in a situation, a catch-22, and the catch-22 works very well for the people in power. So they just whistle on past the graveyard and don't bother to fix it. And, well, they censor anybody who points it out. So here's CTV News, and Tom Leclerc, writing for CTV News, he says, "No golden dome can protect us from Donald Trump." This is just hilarious ridiculousness. Canada is asking Donald Trump, please, can we join your missile defense system for the defense of Canada, please? And Donald Trump's already said, oh, sure, you Canada, we'll take care of you, sure. And now Thomas McClare is saying, you know what the Golden Dome won't protect us from? The evils of Trump. And it's ridiculous. It's stupid, right? If Trump's Golden Dome is necessary, and I don't think it is, then Canada would want to be involved. It's not necessary, and I don't think we should waste the money, but okay, whatever. So it's going to happen. It's not like I can veto this, right? If I could veto, I would veto the crap out of it. And I'd open up all of the records for the Chinese balloons and the drones, and we'd find out what happened there. I think it's hilarious, by the way, that Trump said, oh yeah, what happened with the drones? And somebody said, it was us. And he's like, it was us? And then he looked at the camera and goes, it was us. And that was the end of the drone thing. I think that there was an official statement saying like, yeah, it was basically us. I don't know why. And that was it. And like, there was no further questions, no follow-up, no really anything that I saw. Anyway, maybe there was, but I didn't see anything about it. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious that this was like a 9 of 10 story. People were like, oh my gosh, drones are everywhere. There's a drone invasion. Who knows what's going on, at the same time as the balloons, wasn't it? Or similar timing after the balloons, maybe. And yeah, everybody just kind of forgot about it. Trump said, oh yeah, I forgot about that thing. It was us. It was us. That's fine. Next. Super weird. Anyway, Curious George says, these un-Canadian language requirements need to end. So I look on Indeed. Sometimes I help companies with SEO and help them with websites and things like that. And sometimes I look around for companies who are looking for that kind of stuff because I'm just interested I'm interested in what the market looks like. And recently I've been looking in Texas, but I digress. In Canada, when I look, and I do look, I have also been seeing, can you help us with our website? We're selling X product at Y price, and these are our customers, and you must speak Mandarin, like fluent Mandarin is necessary, and or fluent Punjab, or fluent, there's another one, but I can't remember it. And I thought, man, like it was another like mainland Chinese dialect, Mandarin maybe, Cantonese, I don't know. And I thought, holy cow, like this is Canada. Can you specify must speak English if you're working in a coffee shop? And if you specify must speak English, can you have an English test? Like, what do you mean fluent in Cantonese? Like, here is Vancouver jobs, job language requirements. This is a Reddit Vancouver jobs. Been seeing multiple jobs in various platforms requiring candidates to be able to speak Punjab or Hindi. I understand that some roles might require it, particularly in Indian restaurants. I worked in a Hungarian restaurant. And it was like the only Hungarian restaurant in Guelph, the Danube. This is years ago. It doesn't exist anymore. And anyway, I worked in this Hungarian restaurant and I didn't have to speak Hungarian at all. And I didn't have to be Hungarian. I didn't have to like ascribe to Hungarian anything. I ate goulash and pierogies. I was introduced to pierogies in that restaurant, and now I eat pierogies because they're amazing. But fundamentally, like, I don't. If Indian restaurants say there was a woman who was it? It doesn't matter. They were in a pizza, and the pizza had a job ad on the window, and they said, hey, I'd like to be considered for this job, but this woman said that I couldn't be considered for the job because I'm not Indian, and you're telling me that I don't speak Punjab, so I can't have the job. And like, she had this all on camera. I think it was a she. I digress. Again, it's crazy that this is happening, and not that nobody cares, but nobody seems to care. It's a very, very strange thing when you notice these things and nobody cares. Why is it a requirement for other offices and private healthcare jobs too? It's acting like another filter in an already strained labor market. What are your thoughts on this? Very interesting, I think. Here is Candace Malcolm, and she says, Canadian pension plan abandons 2050 net zero target. That's interesting. Isn't the Canadian pension plan managed by the WEF? I'm pretty sure it is. So interesting. We'll see where that goes. Mark Nixon, let's talk about, this is a grab bag of governance, but this is more financial news. And the other day I was reporting that Trump made changes to the big beautiful bill that just passed, made changes to Canadian holdings in U.S. stocks, changing the dividend tax from 15% to 50%. And this is in retaliation for Canada's digital services tax. And so like if you flick Trump, he is going to punch you square in the face. Like, don't bother, because you're going to get like destroyed. And he's got the clout to do it because he's got the apparatus of the U.S. government and he's in charge of it. So Mark Nixon says Trump's one big beautiful bill could blow up the Canadian U.S. tax treaty. Withholding tax on Canadians' investors' U.S. income could jump to 50%, cost Canadians $81 billion over 7 years, target Canada's digital service tax, pensions, RSPs, and cross-border deals, wrecked. So I'm not like great with money or anything like that. I'm not a money manager. I'm not like, there are people on here who are talking politics and they're also money managers and things like that. And they'll say, this means for you. Find out, because it may have an impact. If you have a portfolio that has U.S. stocks, it may have an impact for you. So find out. You shouldn't ignore it. It's big news, right? This is big news. And I'm sorry that I don't have the tools requisite to communicate with you the gravity of this. But I look at this and I think, holy shit, that's big. And we'll see how it falls out. It may force Canada to change the digital service tax if the United States will drop this, but we'll see, right? And like, we're in a situation where we did something, we thought we got away with it, like punching someone in the dark, right? Victimless crime. And the US is the one that we punched. Whoops, right? And they know, right? So like, yikes. And not so victimless, because now we're going to get screwed. Have you been to a mall lately? It's very interesting at the mall. There's stores closing. So in Stone Road malls, some of the stores are pretty busy. The dollar store is pretty busy. Pizza's kind of busy. There are other places that are busy. Toys R Us is medium busy. Toys R Us bought HMV. HMV closed down. This is years ago though. And now the malls are closing and the stores are closing. I walked down the mall and it used to be that, most of the stores were occupied and one or two stores were under construction, but they were occupied but under construction. And now there are lots of unoccupied stores, one or two under construction. And it's just very interesting how the economics of the mall are dying, right? And I don't know that the mall is dying entirely, but Amazon's eating its lunch completely right now. And it's a very interesting situation, right? So we'll see how that all plays out. Here is the UK is taxing farmers and screwing farmers over in a really, really big way. And this farmer is talking about a ton of barley, which is not very much barley, not very much barley when you look at it, right? How much that barley makes for the British government in taxes once it's been rendered into product, alcohol. Okay. And so he's going through all of this, and I think it's very interesting. This was in my UK set of tabs, but I think it's so interesting because I think this, the economics of farming is something that I'm ignorant of as a citizen of a city. And the government plays on my ignorance to tax all of us in an unfair way. And I think that this guy explains that in pretty well. Here we go. It's not very long. It's like a minute.
How much money does the government make on alcohol duty on a tonne of barley? So, in 1 tonne of barley, what you will make is you'll make 400 litres of pure alcohol per tonne. And in that 400 litres, the government charge £31.64 a litre of pure alcohol. For the 400 litres of pure alcohol you can make off of this 1 tonne of barley, at £31.64 per litre, the government make £12,656 off this 1 tonne of barley of pure alcohol. You then take that to 40% for whisky. That then makes this 1 tonne that produces 400 litres at 40% strength. That makes it 1,000 litres per tonne. So you add VAT onto that at an average of £40 per tonne of whisky. That gives you another £8,000 per tonne. So in total, the government make just north of £20,000 of duty off of this 1 tonne of barley. And we are selling it for just over £200.
Right. They're not able to recoup any of their, well, they're not able to make any of that kind of money unless you're going to enrich it into alcohol, right? And so they're saying they're taxed unfairly. And the other part of this is the inheritance tax that they're applying to farms. So you can't even keep your farm to take your measly $200 when the government makes $20,000 off your product. Your measly 200 pounds. You can't even keep your farm to do that because the government will take it because they'll take your farm through taxes. Right? That's crazy town. It's crazy town when you understand that. It's wild. It's so incredible to me. And yet here we are. And people don't think about this at all. Let's talk about the invasion ongoing in the West. And concerned citizen says, after a few scary encounters, I can't even walk alone to the bus stop. When I go running, my mom has to drive the car behind me in the car. Ireland has taken an unimaginable number of foreign migrants, and now children don't feel safe in their hometown. They've grown up there in their entire lives. Is this the future you want for your children? And so here she is, a minute 30. I hope her accent's not too thick. Here we go.
My name's Caden and I'm 15 years old. I'm a bit late because I have to travel to a different county to training now because there's no buildings free in town for our boxing club. I'm here to give my perspective on the IPAS centres and the unvetted moving into my town, my home. I've lived in Blaney my whole life and always praised my town for the spirit and community. As a young person, especially a young girl, I feel more unsafe now than ever. I go to school in Monaghan, which means I get the bus every day, but after a few scary encounters, I can't even walk alone to the bus anymore. Every morning, either my mum just after a night shift or my dad dragging my brother out of bed, one of them has to walk me to the bus. As I walk through what is now known among the young ones as the dodgiest part of Blaney, most of you will know what part I mean. This is so embarrassing as a 15-year-old. I crave freedom. Going for a run with my mum meters behind me in the car because it's not safe is unacceptable. It's only going to get worse if there are more IPAS centres in Blaney. I've had a knot in my stomach since the Glencairn has been closed, thinking, is this going to be an IPAS centre? I'm not against the ones who flee, but who's looking out for me? Thank you.
So there you go. Ireland is being invaded and people are noticing, and instead of doing anything to stop it, well, we're having people just ignore the citizens and carry on with the bad policies. CCFR is sharing a Candace Malcolm, Sam Cooper interview, and they say investigative reporter Sam Cooper drops never before reported details about the Danforth Shooter's ISIS connections back in 2018 and the cover-up that followed by the Trudeau government, police, and mainstream media. And I reported on this before, and I said that all of this was managed when usually when something like that happens. Same with Marissa Shen, same with any violence, people respond in a way. Same with Southport. Right? People respond in a way immediately where the public wants to blame somebody and the public will then initiate big changes. Look at what they did after 9/11, right? Like, oh my gosh, this happened and now we have to do the Patriot Act. So the Danforth shooter was a smaller scale, but a big deal in Canada, and that would have driven change, except the media said, oh, it was mental health, and oh, it doesn't have anything to do with ISIS ties or terrorism or the invasion that's going on, and so on and so forth. And years later, we find out that all of that was false, and the reality of it is much darker, and they knew, and they did everything they could to bury that, and it worked. And more fool us, because we believed them when we suspected they were lying, right? And again, we're doing it again. We're doing it to ourselves again, over and over again. My gosh, we're already at 35 minutes. Holy cow. I'm not going to play this, but the link is in the description if you're interested. And here's another one. Pierre Polyv. This is funny. I don't know why I find this funny, but I find it funny. Pierre Polyv says, we must secure our borders and shut down terrorist threats. After a decade of weak liberal policies, terrorists and criminals feel emboldened. It's time to put the security of our people first. Holy smoke. Is that 13 words? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, holy smoke. I was worried there for a minute. Whew, he could get in trouble. He could get in trouble from, the liberals for being so blatant about what's going on. Where was this guy during the election? I mean, he got lost somewhere between Bring It Home and Axe the Tax or something like that. What do you think? What do you think Pierre Polyv means here? It's kind of ridiculous, right? And now that the election's over and we're all safe from Polyv having to show that he's not on Team Globalist, which we all kind of know he's on Team Globalist. Now he comes out with this? It's very suspect, if you ask me. I'm very skeptical that this whole thing is above board, if you will. I don't want to talk about the UK yet. We'll move that down. So we have to say goodbye to the stream because we're already pretty long today, and I've got lots more shows. So thanks everybody for watching. Reminder: there's no kitchen table talk today. I have a birthday party I have to prepare for. I have to make pita because that's what I'm doing today, and that takes a long time. So I have to do it after lunch to be ready for 3 o'clock. So it's a whole thing. Anyway, I apologize. I would have really liked to get together today, but it's just not going to work out, and we will be doing it next week. So again, sorry about that, everyone. And thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll... Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.